let's slide over to football, and let's talk a little recruiting. And you can pull up that graphic here, and this kind of just showing, a little bit of a breakdown here of some of the guys that of the 2026 class, which is what we're going to talk about, and then some interesting stuff for a certain player in the 27-28 class. So let's go ahead and dive into that. Overall, looking at the board, what are your thoughts?
Nebraska is really loading up on options at offensive line. The defensive line is a little bit of a concern. Just kind of the options they have is very minimal. Mm-hmm. But I really like this offensive line board. There was one guy that was supposed to visit, but he ended up committing to, was it Clemson or Florida or some school? Maybe it was Miami. But they've got a lot of options on the offensive line that I really like. And Titan Davis and Valden Stone are elite players for Nebraska. And I think Nebraska's probably in the lead for both. Unfortunately, I think I threw up the wrong graphic there.
Oh, you might have.
Yep, I did. Give me a second here.
The professional show, sir. And we got some interesting notes on Trey Taylor as he moved his commitment date up to when was it? Thursday,
May 1st.
May 1st, that's what it was. So Thursday, May 1st, moving that up might be a good sign for Nebraska on the quarterback, but we're going to dive into him a little bit more in just a second. Talking about some of the players that visited. Edge Cameron Wilson visiting this weekend instead of last weekend. So early commit to Syracuse. Started to kind of take off on his recruitment, pass rusher, potential jack. There could be a kind of a versatile type of edge player, 6'5", 215, but he's a big old dude. Kind of like we talked about the differences in the front before, Nebraska moving to kind of more of a 4-man front. So do a little bit of everything. You stand him up, you can put him down in the 3-point stance. Kind of put a little bit more weight on him. He's got the height, he's got the length, but just needs to put some bulk on. So seems to be between Nebraska or Florida State, interestingly enough. But so what's your takeaways on Cameron Wilson?
I think he's a really good option for Nebraska at this edge / jack spot. I think they're probably keeping him very warm for some of the bigger names and kind of see how their board falls, which I think I like. Luke Waffle's a guy that I think they would take a commitment from instantly, but I don't know how likely it is Nebraska gets him. And I think once we kind of figure out what Luke's doing is when we can figure out how aggressive Nebraska will pursue Cameron Wilson. I think he's going to flip from Syracuse. It's just a matter of when and who. Does he want to stay south? Because he's from Florida. So does he want to stay closer to home, or does he want to come out to the Midwest where we actually have winter and stuff?
Prepare for the NFL, man. Come get you experiencing that cold weather. So I think Nebraska's a good shot. Yeah, I kind of like our odds there. It would be a great get just on the kind of the measurables alone. Seems like they could do a lot of good work with him. Corey Campbell will put that weight on him for sure, no doubt.
Oh yeah.
Moving on to defensive end edge Luke Waffle. Great name.
Nebraska's making it tough for him. His brother plays at Penn State, and hell of a name.
Yeah.
His brother plays at Penn State. He just transferred there from Michigan. I think that's where he likely ends up, is more than likely going to be Penn State or even somewhere on that northeastern part of the United States. I don't know how likely it is he ends up coming all the way out to Nebraska. But Nebraska getting him for an unofficial visit is big because they're paying their own way. So there is legit interest if you're willing to pay for those flights, those hotels, to travel halfway across the country to Nebraska. Now, if he locks in an official visit, then it's all these guys too. If you lock in an official visit with these guys, everything changes from there on out.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And it's going to be tough. But I think Nebraska is really good in that D end edge department. You know what I'm saying? So I really want to looking at Devin Jackson, for instance, that secondary, that depth we need. Those are the guys too that we really want to focus on, the cornerbacks, the safeties. So we'll move over to safety. Devin Jackson committed to Florida, teammates with Danny Odom, kind of a multitude of can play kind of versatile cornerback safety. But Nebraska kind of likes him at safety. 6'2", 190, it's Florida looks like the front runner, right? So got to make some ground up. Getting an official visit will kind of tell us where we stand. So what are your thoughts on Nebraska's chances there?
Well, this is his second time paying his own way for an unofficial visit. He came in at the end of the actually it was beginning of February for that Elite Junior Day. It was him and Danny Odom and a bunch of players that came from the Southeast. Paid their own way. Now they're coming back. That's huge. Like I said earlier, Nebraska has a chance to flip him. If he does leave the South, he's coming to Nebraska, if you ask me.
Yeah.
But does he want to leave home? Florida's really kind of on the upswing, I guess you could say, with recruiting, with their NIL now that their lawsuits are kind of past them for not paying players correctly. It's going to be tough to pull this kid away from the Southeast, but Nebraska has the option to say, hey, look, because Danny Odom, I don't think, is being offered by Florida. And so they could say, hey, look, you're going to be here potentially with Danny. You have someone someone you've been friends with your whole life. You two can come tear it up in Lincoln together. I think that's a good selling point.
Absolutely. Yeah, that kind of just brings it together where you can have two teammates. We saw the teammates before, although it didn't work out last season, but it does kind of give that familiarity, and would be very interesting to see a couple of teammates, team back up. So so let's talk about Danny Odom a little bit. The cornerback there, 6'1", so a little bit longer than a couple of the guys we got. Still not that, that full length of your Blight Hill type 6'3", but pretty good size, versatile too. Nebraska wants him to play at cornerback, so 160. So definitely needs to bulk up. Ball skills are there, and second visit for him on his own dime. So that's a key point between Devin Jackson and Danny Odom there, both of them coming out for the second time on their own dime. So also both here for the Elite Junior Day in February. And you think we're in a good spot with them for sure.
I think Nebraska's probably the leader for Danny Odom right now, and his recruitment has been ticking up for a while. It won't be long before these re-rankings come out where he's more than likely going to be a consensus 4-star. Nebraska's got some inroads in Florida and Georgia, and they're exploiting them like crazy. Addison Williams has been recruiting Danny Odom for years back at UCF. That's where this connection with these two, Devin Jackson, Danny Odom, comes from, is from Addison Williams, 100%.
Yep. Yeah, and looking at our chat here, the Jeff Sims conversation is fantastic. Sims' birthday is New Year's Day 2002. So 23, how are we talking about? Jeff Sims, let it go already. Justin, there you go. NASA's going to hate cover on team next year. Joe Walter still at it. Let's see. David Hoppin, all-time point leader. Yeah. Good call there. Good call there. Yeah. Husker Wrestling, real champs. Hard to argue that. Jeff Sims loves Husker Wrestling. Little game, James Franklin. Got my spring day tickets. KC against Cincy tickets. Can't freaking wait.
Well, we'll be there. I'll be there.
Cincy. Yeah, you'll be there. You'll be there. I would love to.
I think he's talking about the home opener against Cincinnati, or not the season opener against Cincinnati.
Season opener. That's why I was like in Kansas City. That's why I was confused. I'm like KC against Cincinnati, but I assume that's what he meant by that for sure. Yeah. Now, the big talk of the offseason, besides the secondary, has been the offensive line. So let's talk about Rex Waterman a little bit. Interior offensive lineman, plays tackle. Looks to be everybody wants him as an interior offensive lineman. So go ahead and give your take on Rex Waterman there.
Yeah, he's got good size, 6'5", 295 pounds. He's playing, I believe, left or right tackle right now at Basha down in Arizona. But everyone wants him as an interior offensive lineman at 6'5". Typically, that's where you would go. You know, if he's 6'6", 6'7", you're probably into tackle. But Nebraska is, I think, the front runner by a substantial margin. If I had to put like a commit watch on anybody that's visiting this week, it might be Rex Waterman. They're the first school from the Power 5 to offer him a scholarship. And then I think Duke came in, UCLA came in, his home school, Arizona State, came in with offers. The real ones to watch are going to be UCLA and Duke. Arizona State, I don't think, is in it at all. If he takes a visit there, keep an eye out. But I'd say it goes Nebraska, UCLA, Duke in that order for Rex right now.
Yep. Yeah, I like Nebraska's odds with Rex for sure. 6'5", 295. Yeah, just a solid guy. He's going to put some bulk on naturally, but just even coming out just huge. Pretty good balance. Like I feel like he's good contact balance. I feel like he's got a lot of good good footwork, but just needs to bulk up a little bit more to play on that inside.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like our odds with Rex for sure. And I'll drive up the road and since I'm out in Arizona, and see if I can do a little convincing myself. Maybe throw him $20. See if that'll sway him.
Yeah, and you got to think too, like he plays at Basha, which is aren't they like one of the best schools in the country every single year?
Yeah, they're up there. They're really good.
And they're playing elite competition week in and week out. I know they play a national schedule too. So he's battle tested. That's
very, very important. Yes, absolutely. Because you see a lot of these guys, you don't know what to think of it because they're just beating up on much smaller guys, less skilled guys. So when you see some film of a guy who is playing against high caliber competition, that says a lot. So shows why Nebraska likes him. Moving back to the secondary, let's go talk about cornerback Major Hinchin. Newer offer in March. Addison Williams again, kind of on that one, but potential priority cornerback. Go ahead and give your thoughts on a Major Hinchman there.
Yeah, I think he's moving up Nebraska's board steadily. He did lock in an official visit, I believe. I am under the impression that they're keeping him kind of lukewarm right now.
Yeah,
they got to see if they can keep CJ Bernot. And really, too, even if they do keep CJ Bernot, do they miss out on, say, a guy like Danny Odom or other guys that are maybe a little bit higher on the board? And then you have a really good fallback option with Major Hinchin. The one thing, too, is I always say look at the offers, not the stars. And that would be like my one kind of red flag is it's UConn, Nebraska, and UNLV, and that's it. So I'm not sure. I haven't watched his tape. I'm not sure where those offers are coming, but he's a big corner. He's like 6'2", 6'3". He's got really good length that you'd look for in a corner. Maybe he got hurt last year. I haven't done a ton of research on him, but based on those offers, you'd have to say Nebraska's the favorite. I don't think anyone wants to go to play for UConn or UNLV, who flat out said they don't have money to pay their head coach. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, UNLV was a fun story there for a little bit. That quarterback situation in their season, but don't expect that to continue. Yeah, I haven't done a whole lot of look at his film. I haven't really been able to take a peek at his just yet. So it'll be interesting to go over that and just see, what it looks like considering the offers. But yeah, usually the offers tell a pretty good bit. But sometimes, like you said, watch the offers. Team makes an offer and all of a sudden the stars start going up because the team made the offer. So really hard to tell sometimes with these recruiting rankings where everybody sits. Now let's get to the wide receivers. So we got Jaden Warden, Jabari Brady, and Nayland Scott. Who's your favorite of these, would you say?
Jaden Warren and Jabari Brady. Yeah.
I would say Jaden Warren is probably my favorite.
Swinging for the fences right now. Yeah. With recruits. I mean, they are like the wide receiver room. They are going after the biggest of big names in recruiting.
Yes, they are. Yeah, and hit the portal hard, wide receiver, out of the gates early, spending a lot of money. But yeah, you look at Jaden Warden. Nebraska's been recruiting him for a while, but a 4-star, top 180 overall, top 20 wide receiver nationally. Oklahoma and Houston been getting on him. Nebraska got to make up some ground, but his unofficial visit will help. Getting an official will be huge. So Nebraska's in his top 6. I believe that was released, yesterday?
Yep, it was, which is huge.
Yep. So Nebraska in his top 6 as of yesterday. So I would say Jaden Warren out of these three is probably my favorite. Jabari Brady, the other guy you were talking about, big time potential wide receiver prospect, 6'2", 190. Miami's the favorite, but Nebraska kind of up there with them. So Nebraska's been in a lot of recruiting battles and a lot of stories with Miami here in this Florida area too, or dealing with these Florida schools. So, but yeah, kind of wants to stay closer to home. That's going to be an uphill battle to fight. But we heard that with Michael Terry last year. He wanted to stay in Texas, but it was one of those things where it's like he was willing to branch out and potentially go elsewhere after he visited the school. So that close to home thing can be, when you come into a school that kind of it gives you that family vibe, that atmosphere, that can sway a lot of schools to feel like a home away or people to make it feel like a home away from home. So can make some good progress there. And then Nayland Scott, you want to go on him, just big body wide receiver.
Yeah, Nayland is I'm not sure how close Nebraska is, honestly. I think they're in a fairly good spot. But you're seeing a trend here with all three of these receivers, big body, physical receivers. Not many guys that are 6 foot, 6'1" that are speed burners. They want those big physical bodies. Georgia's definitely the favorite here. Auburn and Michigan, I'd probably put ahead of Nebraska right now. He's got his visit coming up this weekend, April 11th. That's going to be his second unofficial visit to Nebraska this year. So again, like Nebraska has this chance with him and Jabari Brady and Jaden Warren to just keep climbing up their list slowly but surely. Nebraska's in a pretty decent spot to make a move this weekend. Again, I think he's staying closer to home. And if we could just backtrack to Jaden Warren too real quick.
Oh, yeah.
When Nebraska was recruiting him last year, and then Garrett McGuire was let go, I guess you could put it. Mm-hmm. Nebraska lost complete communication for 2 months, if not more.
Yeah. And
out of nowhere, he's here. Yeah, I'm coming up for an unofficial visit. I think there was this transition period with Dykeel Shorts and Dana Holgerson where they kind of had to reset their recruiting board completely, and they just kind of lost track, and Jaden kind of fell between the cracks and then resurfaced, and somehow Nebraska is skyrocketing up his list. I would probably put them closer, of that top 6, closer to that top 3 if I had to make a guess today. And then Jabari Brady too. He's had 2 unofficials to Nebraska already. He's already locked in an official visit too for the summer. Nebraska's really high on him, and he's really high on Nebraska too.
Would be 2 huge gets.
It'd be
talking about the wide receiver room, just a completely different approach than Scott Frost had. It's we didn't have a receiver over 6 foot at one point with Frost, which is insanity, and it's just a completely different approach now with Matt Rule. He's a mixture of kind of these burners, but even some of the burners. You had Isaiah Nair last year, who's 6'6". So even some of the burners are some of these bigger guys. Even though Nair didn't pan out, but he was a bigger body who had that speed and had that athleticism and that wiggle to get free. So not shying away from the Big Ten size, the wide receivers there. So obviously probably want to get better at the perimeter blocking, those big body guys, but also just have an options for these guys who can go up and get balls, which is what we haven't really had recently. We had Jamal Banks last year, but albeit the offense was terrible. So trying to get some more of those guys in and recruiting, not just trying to get them in the portal, but get them in recruited, trying to bring them up and develop them is going to be huge. But a good stable of wide receivers coming in these recruiting classes. So, love to see the momentum continue there.